Okay, we got an email from one of our viewers, Chris, and he had a question about the lead seal in here. That he rebuilds the old Benjamins, and he has trouble with the lead seal. And what he's talking about there is when you pull out the valve, like this one here, we just pulled out, and we got a lead seal here under the nut. Looked like, the nut was here. The nut came out. This lead seal came out. And then the rest of the exhaust valve and the exhaust valve stem. There should be another lead seal right here, but it didn't come out. So as you're taking these out, take a look and see if that lead seal is stuck here or if it's still stuck inside the tube. And we're going to take a look inside the tube now and see what it looks like and what you can do about it. All right, well, here we are looking into the tube. That kind of a darkish grayish thing is the seal, and there's our poker thingy, and we'll show that in a minute here after we're done getting this out. But basically you get it in there and you got to pry that lead seal off of its seat, and you can see it's just barely moving there, just a little bit. We put a hole in it so we can hopefully grab it. It's starting to separate from the wall, and I'm glad I'm not a surgeon. You see these microsurgery where they do that using these type of endoscopes, and I would not do well at that. That's pretty filthy in there, isn't it? And you look at it. Here it goes. Now we're getting somewhere with it, and there it is. Okay, that was kind of abrupt. Usually they loosen up a little bit and stick to certain parts of the seat, and but in any event, once you get it started, you can reach in there with the hook tool, and I'll show that also in just a minute what the hook tool looks like. But there's our seat, and it looks pretty good. We didn't scratch it, we didn't gouge it. So here's the tools. Like I say, it's important not to scratch the seat there if you can help it, and if you do, you've got to sand it and polish it out. But here's what one end of the tool is just ground to a sharp point, and you can kind of dig in under the edge and pry that lead seal. The other end has a flat screwdriver-like kind of a shape to it, and sometimes that works better, and I have two of them. This one here is just same thing but a little longer, and same thing on the other end, has the screwdriver shape to it. These are just 1/8 inch steel rod. I think they're welding rods you can get at the hardware store. And the last one is a tool with a hook on it so that you can reach down in there and grab it once it starts to come loose and pull it out. And I put a little handle on it here so I can tell where I'm at when I'm, where the hook is oriented. And this is handy too if you need to dig in and pull out, for instance, if the washer in there between the exhaust valve spring and the check valve spring is stuck, you can get in there and pull it out with something like this. So one thing I forgot to mention, we're talking about the Benjamins here, the pistols and rifles, and they'll have generally have two lead seals in them. One in front of the exhaust valve, and the other here underneath the nut. So that's how the Benjamins are. But the Sheridans a lot of times will have a synthetic black seal here, and sometimes those get stuck in the tube too, and you have to, when you pull them out, make sure you check to see if it's still stuck here on the exhaust valve or if it's in the tube still. But you dig them out basically the same way. with these tools, and again being careful not to scratch the surface of the valve seat. Okay, well, let's say you do make a scratch using these tools to dig that lead seal out of there, and you somehow you mark it up. What I do generally is polish all of these seats anyway, and you can get one of these. It's a 5/8 inch steel rod is all that is. And I've shown how to glue sandpaper onto the ends of these things and make a polishing tool. There's I think a video, I'll put a link to it, about how to polish your valve seat. But that's all it is you super glue. In this case I've got 220 on this end and 320 on this end, and you just go into the tube, and it's kind of piloted in a way because this is the same dimension as the tube in that location, or pretty close. And then you just spin it the other way, twist it one way or the other, and then you turn it around with the 320 and do the same thing. So these are pretty handy, and if it's really a bad one, you can go down to 120 or 80 or something like that with some wet dry sandpaper, and make sure you get that gouge out. Okay, well, that's it, Chris. I hope that's helpful and makes it a little easier for you to get those lead seals out of these old Benjamins. Well, we got another email. This is out of a Sheridan here, and he got the pump cup almost out, but instead of coming out, it just he broke it off. And if you get in here, sometimes they come out whole, right? And sometimes they don't. And so what do? I suppose you can, yeah, there you go. See, this one's old and it's ripping apart. It's not going to come out easy. So they are kind of hard to dig out sometimes. So what do you do with something like that? Well, let's take a look and see how we might get that out of there, kind of an easy method here. Well, that's right. You grab your torch and you burn it out. I'm using MAP gas here just because I'd run out of propane, but propane works fine. Do it outdoors where the smoky, nasty fumes aren't going to get you, and burn it, dig it out. If it doesn't come out, burn it a little more, and eventually it will give up, and you can pull it right out, and then you just clean the cup. All right, so we have a problem here. Really the major problem with this gun is this pin is falling out, and the pin is the one that holds the cover here so that the bolt will be closed. It holds this from sliding back. If it slides back, that means your bolt is not fully engaged. There's no ring on the bolt. It's not fully engaged with the bore, and CO2 will leak out around the bolt and not push your pellet forward. I mean, it will, but it'll be slower, so you'll lack power. So we got to do something to keep that cover forward and keep the bolt closed. And I measured this hole actually, and it's not too bad. It's about 118 thousandths, something like that. So we could get a pin of that size, which I happen to have, and we could drive that pin in there, and that would, it's kind of awkward to show it here, but that would keep it from going back very far. But you see it does go back. There's closed. See how much play we've got there? So we're going to have quite a bit of blowback or blowout here around the bolt. The CO2 is going to escape here instead of putting its effort toward the pellet. So we got to put something in there. And I went ahead and measured the distance with the pin in there, like so, and it's about 40 thousandths. So if we can get a pin, this all lined up here, if we can get a pin that fits in that hole and is 120,000 or 40 thousandths larger on the outside, then we'll be in good shape. So I got to figure that one out. What I'm thinking of is getting some material and taking it down to 120, roughly 118, somewhere like that, to fit into the hole. And the part that's sticking up out of the hole would be 120 plus 40 would be 200 thousandths. And if we do that, because there's 40 thousandths on you can't add 40 thousandths to one side without adding it to the other. So if we had it at 200 thousandths sticking out of the hole and 118, 120 going into the hole, and then press it in, that should do it. This is steel, so it's kind of meets that criteria. And we were shooting for 120 thousandths. This is or 118 to 120. And this is, what is that, 170? So we take off 50 thousandths off of this small end. And the big end is 238 thousandths. And so we try to get that to 200. Well, that would be taking 40 thousandths off the big part. This section here that goes into the hole has to be 140 thousandths long, or the hole, I should say, is 140 thousandths deep before you start getting into the bore or the to where you're going to hit the bolt, and we don't want to do that. So we'll take this part down, make it a press fit, and cut it off so it's 140 thousandths deep. And I think I'll leave this a little bit longer, and we can always grind it down to whatever length. It's supposed to stick out about 150 thousandths, so we'll maybe take it down to 200 or 180, something like that. All right, we've got it checked up in the lathe, and we're turning this down to the correct dimensions. Once we get that done, this is the part that goes into the receiver here, and just a few more thousandths we'll take off, and then we'll turn the button part that sticks out and catches the bolt cover and get that to dimension 2. Then we'll take it over to the belt sander. All right, here we are at the belt sander. We're grinding this to, or sanding it down to length. I mounted it in a drill chuck so that I can hold it easy. Well, that ought to do it. Okay, I think rather than just put this in there, we're going to heat treat this and put a little bit of a hard shell on it. So here's our part here, and I've got it sitting on this little strap and put it in the vise. We're going to torch it with our MAP gas. Hopefully that'll get it hot enough, and then when it does get hot enough, we're going to knock it off the diving board into the Casonite. Let's go ahead and get started on this. Light our torch. One problem with this is we don't want to knock it off with the flame. We need to get it cherry red. You can see it changing color already. We need to get this cherry red and then put it into the Casonite. It's important not to store your gasoline, like right here when you're doing this. All right, we fished it out of that can of Casonite. Now for the second part of the trick. It's basically been coated with Casonite, and now we're going to heat that and drop it down off the high dive here into this pool of water, and that should complete the trick. Here we go. See it behave a little differently with the casonite on it. Well, I'll give him a 10 for level of difficulty, but only an 8 for technique. We've mounted the receiver in the arbor press, and we're pressing the new, well, I don't even know what you call this, a bolt pin or something like that. We're pressing that into place here. You can't really see it in the video, but we're pushing it down there. Okay, there's that. Well, there you have it. The new pin sits right there, and it functionally it works fine. It's a nice snug fit. There's no slop here in the cover, but it's still pretty easy to open and close. So overall, we're satisfied functionally with this. Now, if you have a missing pin, and one easy way to fix that would be to buy a new one. And I know Mike Baker down in Arizona has them, and probably Baker Air Guns and Precision Pellet. Several sources you could probably go to pick one up, but I think mine had an oversized hole, which is why the old one fell out originally, probably. So so that's why we went ahead and made this. Now there's maybe a couple of things I would do differently. For one thing, I would probably blue it, and I made the decision not to, but now that I'm looking at it, it kind of sticks out a little bit. So I probably would have blued it and possibly knurled the stud part of this that was pressed down into the receiver here. But those are not big deals. This is a gun that I'm going to keep, and this is going to go in my pickup. Just I'll have some CO2 powerlets and some pellets and this pistol, and you never know when you're going to have an opportunity to do some shooting. So that's what I'm going to do with this gun.